Welcome to Ask Me Anything. Today we speak to Thomas West, the founder of RentMy, which is a modern rental platform promoting the economy of sharing. Hi, Tom. Can you tell us a bit about your product, also the idea how you came up with it, and maybe a bit about your background?
Of course. Hi, guys. So I'm Tom from RentMy, and I originally came up with the idea of renting anything back in 2006 when I wanted to rent a kayak when on holiday in France. Unfortunately, I was standing around by a river, couldn't see all these kayaks available, just sitting on people's front gardens, and I couldn't rent a kayak. And I thought, cool, wouldn't it be great if the internet was a thing and you could rent stuff off each other? So I came home, started writing a business plan for it, bought the domain rentmy.com, and started researching how this could work, and just realized that technology really wasn't there, that the opportunity for market adoption wasn't quite there, and we would need a little bit more time to get ourselves in that space. So it did take a little bit longer than anticipated, but in 2020, I decided to start the journey again. And as I felt that now's the time that people are going to really need to start sharing items, both for the social benefit, but also the climate impact as well. And we just sort of felt that would be a really good time to start the process again. But in the interim, I've been working in tech on and off, and I've also been working in hospitality. I own a hospitality business, but I previously sold a tech company to a large wholesaler over here in the UK that was doing home delivery of groceries within a 45-minute period. But again, I was a little bit ahead of the curve, and I was doing that back in 2009, 2010, when I now see large companies coming in, Gorilla, Delivery, Get Here, all coming into this space and playing catch up. So I think now I've got the timing right with this one.
Keep my fingers crossed. So can you tell us where exactly you are with RentMy now?
So RentMy is a startup. We're still in our pilot phase. We're running regional pilots in our area, but we've also been doing a lot of data and research on what other solutions or products are out there. When we've looked at a lot of our colleagues in the sharing economy space, we've realized that the big issue is around data and the structure of that data. And so we've been looking at solutions on how we can really structure that data so that it can give meaningful insights to both insurers, government bodies, and we can use it for the benefit of the users themselves as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you want to make the whole platform also like secure for your users, yeah, and so how you are trying to achieve this? How you want to tackle this challenge of feeling secure when renting your stuff to someone that you don't know?
So renting off of someone directly is actually quite a good way of first of all reducing risk. If you pick something up off the street, let's say it's an e-scooter or a bike, you have no connection with the person that handed it over to you. You just go, collect it, pick it up, drop it off. It's completely contactless. But when you look at someone in the eye and you say, hey, here's my bike, look after it, that relationship changes. Now, that's not the whole basis of our security system, but it's a very good start, is you build that on community. We utilize third-party data models and data structures that enable us to be able to highlight any potential bad actors coming into the platform, and that enable us to make sure that our collective and our community are pretty good within that space. But accidents can happen, and so we're looking at how we make sure that we protect our users when something does go wrong as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. So you mentioned that the community is a very important aspect, and for any business, it's always, especially startup, it's always a challenge, as we can see to grow this community. So yeah, so it's a very interesting question and challenge, I guess, from your perspective, to build this community. And so I would like to ask you how you try to address this challenge, how you want to grow this community. Do you have any specific idea, or you will just do whatever you will be able to do?
So recent research is starting to lead us down the view that people want to share their items, but only with their friends or with community people that they feel a connection with. And so we have some tools coming that will enable us to grow through that sort of that network effect, because we believe that that's a really solid way of people engaging, but also for people to sort of have that security in their mind that the platform is not just publicizing everywhere what they own, so what their assets are. And we think that's really important, because a lot of people that want to move into the sharing space are willing to share, but they're not quite ready to share with absolutely everyone. They're just willing to share with their friends or family or people in their town or community. So that's quite an interesting one that we just need to look at. And then once we start breaking down those barriers and this becomes adopted practice, then we'll see different levels of engagement, which are good. We believe, so the thing about the community is this isn't like sharing from a shop or from a sort of larger body. This is sharing directly with someone. And so what happens is there's much better communication. This isn't just you go and buy something from a shop or you go and rent something from a shop. You have much better communication on actually how to use the item. So now we end up with education pieces. They don't even realize, but they're minute little bits of education on an item. So it could be anything from how to use a drill and how to hold it correctly, or how to get started into a hard surface like a tile or into wood or something. It could be something. So our first rental on RentMy was a remote control sailing boat. Now, a remote control sailing boat has no engine. So you put it on the water. If you point it in the wrong direction, that's gone. Mm-hmm. That's potentially, that's on its way to Holland. So you've got to figure out how do you communicate to someone who's not done this before? Actually, how do you sail? So that was a really interesting engagement. We watched that engagement happen via text and then in person. And then we conducted interviews afterwards of both parties. And they said one of the things that they really felt was lovely was the fact that the person who owns the sailing boat decided that he'll come and meet them by the water and explain to them properly and train them on how to use it. And it actually made the whole experience far better. And it's a bit like when you hire a bike in a town or a village, or when you go out on a kayak down a river and you just go off in the wrong direction, and you could have had all these wonderful vistas and views and a great time there, and just a bit of local knowledge or a bit of knowledge passed on actually changes an experience quite drastically, and so it's definitely for the benefit.
Mm-hmm. From what you're saying, I can see that you stress this personal element to this interaction of renting. So I'm interested where it comes from. Is it based on some kind of research, or maybe your personal experiences with maybe hospitality?
Yeah, I think that there's always an element of sort of when I went back to hospitality after doing a couple of years of tech, I sort of felt that some time off within hospitality would help. That never got rid of the tech bug. So we've got kiosks in some of the outlets. We have online ordering apps. The moment COVID hit, we put in things that were ahead of sort of time, that people weren't ready to start using. COVID hit, and all of a sudden they start using them. So I've always been tinkering with tech, and especially in hospitality, but tech isn't a solution for community. Tech isn't a solution for what hospitality does. Hospitality is a very unique space where you get everything that can happen in tech can happen in seconds in hospitality. So you can go from a customer having a great experience to an absolutely disastrous experience, and making that very well known in real time, in person, not hidden behind a keyboard, not via an email chain. This is bang right now. And you need to come up with a solution for it, because otherwise it can affect your customers that are also in the same space experiencing this. And so there are times where things go wrong, and you have to be able to handle that. Now, all right, 18 years of doing this, we've been able to mitigate that. But that hospitality element is really important, because it enables you to understand what the consumer wants. It enables you to build a stall and almost have them turn up and say, right, this is my stall. This is what I sell. If you like it, keep coming back. If you don't, there's other places available. So I have to make sure my stall is the place that they want to come to, and that is constant competition. And it's the same thing with the website. So you have to make sure that community that you build that visit your stall is the same type of community that's going to engage with each other, and that's really important.
Yeah. So very interesting. Thank you. Can you tell us a bit more about the sharing economy? What's the status of the sharing economy in the UK? How developed is it? So
this is a topic that I think every country looks over the fence and says the grass is greener over there. So after a recent visit to the US, they were telling me that the UK is far more developed. The UK looks at Europe and goes, Europe is far more developed. Europe looks at the US and goes, Europe. The US is really far developed, and I don't think there's really an answer in terms of yet that's firming that one up. But I think we are progressing. We are starting to see some adopted markets. So clearly, Airbnb, probably the world's largest sharing economy platform by quite some margin. Although obviously their market and model has moved on beyond just sharing economy. But the general consensus is that there's still so much space within all of these markets. There's really no defined leader yet, and no market dominant force yet, and that's something we're looking to fill. We believe that the growing behavioural change towards sharing is important, but what we're concerned about is the way that sharing economy is getting lumped in with gig economy businesses as well, and they're two very different things. The idea of sharing items, skills, or space, that's a very different thing to sort of offering your services as a temporary worker or a temporary employer on a gig contract. So yeah. But I think in Europe, I think the best example of sharing economy working in Europe is BlaBlaCar. Mm-hmm. I just think they've done such a fantastic job in growing, and they've been fantastic throughout. It's not really worked particularly well in the UK, which is sad. But I think that mindset that the European culture has taken on, I think is fantastic, and I look forward to the day when we do see that in the UK, because that will make a big difference.
Yes, that's a very interesting point that you touch upon with gig economy. I've recently been reading about it, and I've come across another concept that I wonder if you're familiar with, passion economy, which is contrasted with gig economy because it's about creating passive income. It's connected actually with creating something by people, but it's more about creating ways of generating income in a passive way, which is not so, because I guess gig economy can be sometimes draining, and it doesn't really provide that much comfort for the participants.
I know what you mean. Yeah, passive economy is the dream, isn't it? I think we do like to be a part of the passive economy. Get on a boat and sail around the world. I think that's the ambition. Unfortunately, I don't always feel that that things come for free. I think you've got to graft at some point, or have put some effort in at some point. So, as close to the passive economy as sharing economy can be, I would say that renting out items that you already own, that you use occasionally, and that you share, or would be happy to share, I think is pretty much as close as you're going to be able to get to the passive economy without heading down various investment things, or there's all sorts of different concepts within that. But I think our focus on this for us is making the platform and our apps as convenient and streamlined as possible, so that consumers can move away from that linear consumption of going out and buying something, and they can start sharing their items, and then we do see those positive impacts afterwards.
Yeah. So yes, did you want to ask something?
Yes, because it's very interesting what you are saying, because when you were talking, I was wondering, what are the real factors, especially in your country, in Europe, in general, that are driving the potential success of any business that is based on sharing economy concept. And it sounds like there is a very important aspect, let's call it like cultural or social type of aspect of it, and not only the economic one, and in the sharing economy. And this is probably very important. So you mentioned BlaBlaCar and the reasons. In some countries it was a great success, maybe in others not, but it's very, very highly connected to the potential of adopting some social aspects or cultural aspects to this. And because I guess, like, for someone that is another thought, for someone that is sharing some stuff with other people, is also kind of it's a social experience, because you also share your passion behind the item that you are sharing. So it's like sometimes it's also like sharing passions, not only sharing items. So it's much more deeper probably than only trying to get some additional income, I guess. And that's just a very important factor. So if you are aware of it and you know how to drive this and make it happen, probably then you have a success potentially. What do you think?
So there's a lot in that. So I'll unpack it. Just I made some notes as we go through, but I think you're absolutely right in what you're saying. I'll just touch on that last bit around that passion of a particular section or niche, or something you have a particular hobby that you're interested in. So we definitely see that being a driver for being involved. When we were writing out our actors and our modeling and trying to understand the best part of why people might want to engage in this, it's the shared experience. It's the watching someone else succeed and feeling like you're part of that. So that could be anything from tools, so they can make something and then you feel part of that creation process, or it could be something where someone picks up a new hobby and now you have someone else to share that. Let's say it's fitness. Now you have someone else to share that with. So it could be paddleboarding, and you used to go paddleboarding on the river by yourself, and then suddenly now there's 6 or 7 of you, and that's a shared experience. And you build friendships, relationships off the back of that, and we build our own tribes from that. I think consumer behavior has changed massively, and it's been changing for a few years. Let's be honest, but it massively changed through COVID, and that acceleration period, I think brands are still trying to pick up on. So previously, brands would look at their consumers saying, "Well, what's the lifetime value of this customer to us? We've spent X amount on marketing and pounds on them. So, what's the lifetime value of that to us?" That was how we were bought as users. What's happened is the customers flip that on their head, and they're basically looking at the brand and going, hold on a minute, if I wear your brand, what do you mean to me? What do you put out there? What things have you been doing with regards to the climate, or with regards to social movements, or whatever else is? So I think that we're starting to see that change, and that's where we think that the sharing economy really comes into its own. And whether we end up with branded sharing economy items or platforms, niched into their own sections, we'll see. And that's going to be fantastic if we do. And then the other side of it is also what happens in scenarios where there's major disruptions. So an example right now is sadly the Ukraine situation. If we have disruption to our supply chains and we can't keep consuming items in the way we used to consume items, how do we stop that? How do we change? How do we share items better? And God forbid that the Chinese sort of take a side one way or another, but all of a sudden we might end up in a bit of a problem where we can't now import items from China. And that would, the UK especially, is particularly weak at manufacturing. And so we need to look at, well, how do you keep the economy going? And we think that the sharing economy from a B2B side of things, it potentially has a lot to answer for, to help continue to move that forward as well. So there's lots of little community elements within that, and each of those communities, whether it's person to person, whether it's B2B, or whether it's education or healthcare, there's lots of elements that could be built into that, and then you do end up with that experience and support side of things that's massively important.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So at this point, I just wanted to ask additionally about the circular economy. So how does it relate to the sharing economy? Are they the same?
But they are and they aren't. So the circular economy, I think the sharing economy is a precursor to it. I think circular economy will start coming, and we'll start seeing manufacturers being more alert and aware of it. Within our technology, we've built the ability for us to turn on circular modules. So after running a project for a large tool manufacturer, we looked at what opportunities there could be within what we're building, for the item never to be actually sold to the consumer, but just to be rented for the entirety of its life. And we could see that the consumers, the benefit for the consumer is that they end up not having to outlay huge amounts of cash initially, and they can tailor their budgets according to what the item essentially they may or may not use, or they might end up ending up with communal sort of tool or asset use. The circular economy would take it one stage further. So you'd end up with a manufacturer designing a product with multiple lives. So you with multiple lives. So you look at it and you say, well, let's say that they're making lawnmowers, and a lawnmower's probably got quite a long shelf life. So you're looking at 5 to 10 years before someone replaces a lawnmower. But they sell normally, historically, they would have sold 50,000 of this particular model of lawnmowers, or 100,000 of this particular model of lawnmowers. The circular economy, in that sense, is them looking at that lawnmower and saying, right, when that lawnmower finishes its life, how do we get that lawnmower back? What are we going to do with the 500 tons of mild steel, the 300 tons of plastic, the electrical wiring? How are we going to repurpose that and then move on to building our next set of products out of that? So we don't keep digging stuff out the ground, and we start making things sort of fully circular. Yeah. It's almost a little bit of combination of recycling, but if it's designed in a way that it can be repurposed time and time again, then that's a big plus. We also see insurance, which insurers haven't really moved into this market within the circular or within the sharing economy quite heavily enough, I don't feel. But the view is that the product could potentially include insurance as part of the process as well, which would then retain the value of the item throughout, which businesses clearly want to focus on as well.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that the circular economy is more possible to realize when the manufacturing is more local.
Absolutely, yeah. The globalization of, or we either need to decarbonize transport to a point where it's either negligible impact or it's no impact at all, or we need to change the way we make and manufacture items and just shorten routes and construction techniques. But that's a whole different kettle of fish. So yeah.
So before we finish, I would like to maybe come back to our little discussion about the use cases, or maybe some examples of businesses where we can see that actually this sharing economy concept works. And this is a real sharing economy. So you already mentioned BlaBlaCar, which is interesting. I guess in Poland it has a quite success. I just want to ask you a little bit deeper question, because you said it didn't work in UK. Do you know why?
Uh, I think it's a cultural thing. I just don't think that we, over the past 15 years, have been the most open to being sharing. And I think that that is a cultural issue that is slowly being changed. Sadly, I think that there's a new generation that are far more open-minded about that, and yeah, I think that that's a positive change in the right way. How far it goes, I don't know. We'll see. But if we look at the US, the BlaBlaCar hasn't really worked out there either. But that's because they have carpool lanes, and outside of cities, you have carpool parks. So you'll drop off one car, and you'll stand there and wait to get a lift into town with someone else, or you'll jump onto other forms of transport with other people. So they kind of do it differently. And I just don't think it necessarily came across in the UK. And also, it's down to messaging. I think the latest company that are really pushing it over here, LiftShare, and they're just up the road in Norwich. They're doing really well by coming into the market and activating it through corporates and businesses. So they're asking their businesses to get behind it, because if they can get their employees to save on the number of journeys coming into the office, that overall helps cut the office's CO2 output, and also reduces the number of parking spaces. Just there's multiple benefits to why you'd want to do that, and obviously increases social interaction as well, which is really beneficial, because that social equity is massive within a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would like to add additional comment to the BlaBlaCar case. I'm wondering why it had success in Poland specifically, and maybe there was a little good background for this, foundation, because we I know, probably like 30 years ago, or even maybe further in time, there was like some kind of the whole culture around hitchhiking, I guess. And I remember even from being in school, and this was like the case that we really liked to do this, and hitchhiking was kind of a cultural, social experience, not because you were doing this, not because you were specifically want to spend less money on your transportation. You did it because this was like a kind of an aspect of adventure in this. Yeah. And it's and I remember from some comments from my colleagues and friends that what is really nice in BlaBlaCar is that you don't have to drive alone. You spend some time with someone, you meet people. So it was more like spending your time in a valuable way for you. It was a kind of a social experience, rather than just spending less money on gas or whatever. So this somehow connects with what we discussed at the beginning of our conversation, that the whole sharing economy aspect or business is very tightly connected to the social aspect of it.
Well, we've just performed the sharing economy, and we've turned it into the circular conversation at the same time by coming back to community, because that's what it is, isn't it? It's community, and that aspect of community is so important. But social equity of actually seeing people in the flesh cannot be replaced by technology, and I think that there's pros and cons there. It works in certain environments with regards to office work and things like that. But I think when it comes down to experience and personal desires, I think people actually want to spend time with other people in the flesh, as a majority. Not everyone, but as a majority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the same time, when we see it, we can see that there are so many cases of such successes, like BlaBlaCar. At least I do not know anything such successful here in Poland. So this is the question: why, if this is so beneficial socially, and there is also some kind of an economic benefit in this, why we are not, surrounded by social economy type of businesses?
Yep.
This is a very interesting aspect. I guess that that's my guess, that there has to be like little, sweet balance between what is your social experience in this, and there has to be a little bit of economic drive in this, and especially if you look at the BlaBlaCar, will be and treating this as a kind of a benchmark for us today. I guess that the gas prices are also something that makes this happen. So probably this has you have to find something in sharing economy that balances those two aspects: the experience, the social experience, and there has to be economic factor in this that will be, driving at least.
I don't know. It has to be. I don't know that it always has to be economic reward. The amount of people that are willing to share with their friends for free is actually quite a strong driver, and we were a little bit surprised at that on our research. So that's quite interesting. But I think that is because it's the shared experience reward, and whether that is completing a task, or whatever else, it can be something different. But I think we have been for a while, and we're slowly picking up pace towards the complete democratization of the economy. Because that's what seems to be happening is people can work when they want, where they want, how they want. They can utilize their assets for whatever sort of revenue stream they want to utilize them for, on a marketplace that they want to use them within. And they can buy things how they want now as well. They don't necessarily need to buy everything. They can start sharing and renting. And so it's fantastic to see. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the future. RentMy is been a fantastic project so far, and I'm looking forward to our scale up. And I look forward to potentially talking with you guys again soon.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our fingers are crossed. So we wish you the best.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time today as well.